this program, the idea for this program actually came from the youth. They were interested in knowing more of the history of the Raleigh Muslim community. And we were telling them actually that Muslims started coming to this area way back in the 1950s. I didn't even know that it had gone back that far. And so they were really interested in that. And we were thinking about doing a podcast of issues related to seniors. It could be health issues and anything related to seniors. And so the brother said, why don't you do a Friday night program first to gauge the interest of the community to see if there's interest in that. And so that's why we're here, doing it as a Friday night program first. We have other activities by the senior committee. We have a coffee chat, second, every other Saturday, right in this room over here. And we've had some wonderful speakers on health issues. We've had fun activities. We've had luncheon, picnic, games. So please invite your parents and yourself to come out and join us, because we don't mind younger people coming in too. We even had some young people to help us with technology, to help us learn how to use our own cell phones, you know. So alhamdulillah, we're here, and we're going to get the program started. And the idea of the program, like I said, to talk about the history of Islam in the Raleigh area. And we know that it's not just Raleigh, Chapel Hill area, Durham, but we could go on and on and on. So we're going to limit it to Raleigh right now. And believe it or not, our first speaker, Imam Oliver, he shared with me that actually Islam actually started in the 1950s. So he's going to be coming in a little bit later. And because Dr. Rashim has to leave a little bit earlier, we're going to let him start it out. So he's going to be sharing some things about Islam in the 1980s. And I want you to take some notes, please. I was a teacher, so take your notes. If you have some questions, I don't mind you asking. So we're going to try to save about 20 minutes at the end for your comments or questions or anything else you have. So we're going to start it now. And let me say a couple of words about the doctor. He so graciously agreed to come tonight. First he said, I'm coming. Then he said, I can't come because my wife had other plans. And then she said, oh, I'll change the plans, but he has to leave a little bit early. So the good doctor, Dr. Shamim Rahman, he was a professor emeritus of civil engineering at NC State University, and he moved to Raleigh in January 1980. So doctor, would you share with us some of the positive things about establishing Islam here in the Raleigh area and any challenges and things of that sort? We also have a paper that's going around, so we want you to fill that out before the end of the program.
I have been asked to talk about early 1980 to 85 history of Raleigh area Muslim community. Of course, I'm actually very old now. My memories have faded away. So what I will do is try to give an outline of whatever I can recollect with respect to the topic. But I like to begin with some time which I spent before coming to Raleigh. I, of course, as mentioned, I moved to Raleigh exactly on January 1, 1980, from Berkeley, California. And the reason I'm going to go back a little bit, because whatever I say will have some relevance to the situation here too. After coming to Berkeley, of course, I became part of the Muslim Student Association there on the campus. Closer to the mic, okay? Can you all hear me very well? Oh, good. All right, so talking about Muslim Student Association, it was at that time a very active students group there, and that was only a chapter. By that time, MSA had become a national organization, having chapters in most of the larger American universities. Okay. Now, At that time, in 1980, in the whole Bay Area, there was not a single mosque, except one in San Francisco, which was quite far from our place in Berkeley. But we used to pray Jummah in the student center of the campus. And my apartment was very close to that student center. So I was given a task to reserve the place in the student center and also arrange for the spreadsheets and all that every Jummah. So that was my initial involvement with MSA. But I want to recall that those times there was not much of a so-called community activity. So we Muslim students were the only one who used to pray regularly, and also Friday evening, like today, we used to have a study circle and all that. Now, Muslim Student Association, I will talk a little bit about more with this organization. Actually, Muslim Student Association, just a few years afterwards, in maybe around late 80s and so on. It was transformed into what we now call ISNA, Islamic Society of North America. I really did not understand much why did they change the name. Muslim Student Association was a very good name. And the reason I did not like the change in name, because Muslim students is a good name, and as a Muslim, we are supposed to remain a student all our life, right? So, but they wanted to make a distinction between students versus the community consisting of the professionals doing jobs and so on. But that's just a side note. But now in the Bay Area, as I said, as the Muslim population grew, there are maybe a dozen of mosques in a couple of Berkeley, San Francisco, San Jose, and all around that. Now, with that note, I want to come to Raleigh. When I came to Raleigh, I was very happy to see that there was an equally active MSA group here on NCA State campus. And actually, there were a larger number of Muslim students from Middle East there, some from Libya, some from Kuwait, some from Palestine, and few from Saudi Arabia also. In fact, my own first PhD student was from Libya. He was a very good guy. I was very happy to learn very recently last year that he also has retired like me after, but not, I just retired as an ordinary professor, but my student retired after becoming Vice Chancellor of the university in Benghazi. Anyway, that's just a side note again. So after here, my impression was very good that we have MSA active everywhere, and these students were again having Arabic classes and evening activities and so on. One thing I want to observe that no matter where Muslims are from, I'm talking about early days in the 80s and earlier, whenever the Muslims come and wherever they come from, they have a inbuilt tendency to associate with each other, maintain their Muslim identity, and of course, other desire was if they start having families, they want to try to keep their family and the children especially closer to Islam. So coming to Raleigh, in fact, when I was initially, when I was moving from California to here, some of the people didn't know much about North Carolina. In fact, when I went there to the postal clerk to mail a few books to my office here, they said, "Where are you going? Are you going to a village?" My reply was, I'm not scared of village because I come from a village in India. So anyway, after coming here, I found that no, I didn't feel much of a difference because I was always associated with the campus life, and I was coming from a campus life, so it was the same thing for me. Now, other good thing which I observed was that there were quite many Muslim community faculty members also at NCA State. In those days, most of them were from Egypt. And I will talk about some of them later on. Also at that time, there was no mosque here in Raleigh area. Same way as we used to pray Jummah in the student center, we used to pray Jummah in the student center of North Carolina State University, ballroom of the NC State University. At that time, of course, we should also note that there was a community, so-called community organization by the name Islamic Society of North Carolina, or maybe I'm not remembering the name, Islamic Association of North Carolina. Dr. Wahaj, whom most of you have seen and known, he has moved from here. At that time, he used to live in Fayetteville, but he was chairing that group, Islamic Association of North Carolina. And at that time, along with the chairman, there used to be a vice chairman, and the vice chairman was the professor of textile from North Carolina State University, Professor Mansoor Muhammad. I guess many of you might have used to be here most of Friday, but I haven't seen him for a long time. Anybody knows about him? He's Alhamdulillah, okay. So he actually was a very senior professor, very accomplished, author of many books, and I used to consider him as my mentor, someone to look up to and get inspired. Okay, now coming back to that organization, after 4 years, the chairman would go and the vice chair would become the chair. And Dr. Mansoor Muhammad became the chair at that time, and I was appointed as a vice chair. And later on, when Dr. Mansoor moved away from or stepped down, I also served as the chair of that group. But let me say this, that in spite of the fact that IANC were involved in the beginning with a student association towards the foundation of the masjid. In fact, the students, I should say the students were the main group of the people responsible for creating the mosque here. And in fact, they first made the first committee for the construction of the mosque, and they invited Dr. Mansoor Muhammad and also myself to join that group. But that group actually did very little, and I would say without any hesitation that as a group we never initiated the actual project of mosque construction. All right? So the students were the main one, and they should be given the credit. In fact, if you talk to some other people, they will have other version of the history of that. But I am telling here in this mosque that it is students, the Muslim students, who should be considered the primary mover of the main project. And most of those students used to live very close to this center, and many of them, and several of them used to live in the King's Village. And luckily they found this place to buy, and so they bought the land in late 80s, and then they started the project. Now again, even I was here, if you ask me which year exactly that first mosque, which is the red building, was built, can anyone help me with which year was that? It must be around 1982 or soon after, as a mosque, around 82, 83. All right, so they were the one instrumental in raising the money and starting the mosque. And then that brings me close to 1985. 1985 is important because that year, this organization IAR was created and developed. And in fact, that is the same year where Muslim Student Association invited our Imam Bainuni to come here to Raleigh. So Imam Bainuni came here to Raleigh as the first Imam of the mosque in 1985. Okay, and since I was given only 1980 to 85, I stopped here. And there's just one note that later there were a period in which there were differences, and I would say even disputes developed in relation to the IAR and all that. But this is not a time and place to go into that. Those people who will come later on, they can get into that, if people want to understand and hear that. All right. And in my conclusion, I should say that, of course, having a center, a mosque, to get together, to pray, and to have a community life is very important. But to younger families here, my advice would be never think that this is the end solution. Your life as a Muslim is primarily dependent on your own efforts at the individual level and the family level. Okay? And of course, visiting masjid and coming to Jummah, listening to khutbah, and even though some of the khutbahs may be boring, this is important as a reminder. And let me stop there, but I invite you to ask me any question regarding my life as a student, and then after coming here, my experiences with the students here in Raleigh. This is all I have to say. Then,
Thank you. So I said we want to bring in more people who were a part of that history, and if you like, we may have a part 2, because this is a very rich history. And so we're going to go back now to, we'll start with Sister Kulsum. Is she here? Where are you? Okay. So Sister Kulsum is director of an organization called Artist Uma, and she's the public artist for Method Community Park. She's going to explain why she's here. I don't think she likes to be called a senior, but we've kind of adopted her.
That's fine. Hamza, are you going to play the video? Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Kulsum, and I am a public artist working with the city of Raleigh. My job is to tell the story of the history of the Method community. And along with that comes this amazing opportunity to tell the story of Muslims of Method. So what I'm doing is I'm working on a video, which is a documentary style video, and interviewing different members of the community. And Imam Oliver has been one of the people who I've had the pleasure to interview. And this video series is gonna be available in Method Community Park after the renovations take place in a permanent exhibit. So it's very important, alhamdulillah, that our voices are included in this exhibit that's going to be open to everybody. So here you go, here's a clip.
Can you tell the Method community
Yeah.
where this masjid is located, the history as far as it being predominantly African-American community?
Absolutely. Well, I think Imam Oliver is going to tell that story. Yeah, so there's going to be a clip for everyone to see.
I tell you, the Islamic Association of Raleigh is like a hub. I'm pleased to see that the community has grown, not only in breadth, but in height and in respect, not only in the city of Raleigh, but right here in Method as well. But them being African American, there wasn't many immigrants, even students on NC State's campus. That came later, maybe 30 years later, before you really begin to see a growth of the immigrant Muslim community, particularly on NC State's campus. And so the masjid, it was 20 to 30 years after Kenneth them moved to this community. Kenneth and Margaret Murray, they were considered pillars in the community. They were much involved in the Method Civic League. At one time, my father-in-law, Kenneth, he became the president of the Method Civic League. So in this community of Method, he was probably the first Muslim that lived in this community, and he was very much involved with the community. And one of the things that he was told, that one day, because of the work he was doing, that you're going to be a part of building $1 million mosque in your community. That was said back in the early 60s, that he was told that that would be a vision that he would one day be a part of. So they were meeting in, I think it was King's Apartments. They were meeting in apartments, and then they would do, when they got big enough to hold Friday prayers, Juma prayer, they was in the Student Union Center on campus, I believe. And I don't know the transaction that took place to purchase the property, but they were able to purchase that property. So I think one of the things that Kenneth really helped was to sensitize the community, the Muslim community, to the importance of building bridges in the community and letting the people know that we're here to be good neighbors, that we're here to be a support for you.
Thank you.
So that was just a small part of the video, but I think a very important one to people, for our own community and the community at large, to know what the history of IAR was. So, Jazakallah khair.
So that's a wonderful segue right into Imam Oliver, who's here in live in the flesh, inshallah. So he's going to share things that happened from the 1950s up to the 70s.
1950 to 70s. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. I thank you all for inviting me to come here. This is like a home for me, because I kind of saw how this place grew. I remember when I first came around, and the first floor of the building in the back was being built. It was a moving moment in history in Raleigh, as well as in this community. But what led up to that was the fact, as we said on the video, that Sheikh Kenneth Mohammed, particularly in North Carolina, as I said, he was a towering kind of figure. And I'm reminded of the Prophet ﷺ saying, he said, Islam comes in the world as a stranger, and it will come back again as strange, as a stranger. And I know he always felt that way, that he was one of the first individuals who came to North Carolina in the early 50s to begin to promote what he thought was Islam, what he had learned in his heart was Islam. And he was a stranger, Can you imagine, coming in a society that's predominantly Christian and many other types of religions, and he's a lone wolf, as you say, us trying to make something happen for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the best of his knowledge and what he was working with during that time. And he was able to plant seeds in different cities in North Carolina, particularly first in Durham, Raleigh, and also in the surrounding areas like Sanford, North Carolina, Wilmington, Fayetteville, and many other places. But to fast forward coming to Method, and he moved in Method in the 50s, in the late 50s, early 60s. And the history is interesting because his coming to Raleigh brought two probably of the most world-renowned dais for America, for the growth of Islam in America. In the early to mid-60s, 1963, El-Hajj Malik Shabazz was in his house, spending the night with him and his family in Raleigh. Then fast forward years later, in 1969, 67, the greatest of all time in boxing, Muhammad Ali, stayed in the house right around the corner for almost a week. And he would run around in this community, and the children would follow him around. I'm saying that's historic because I think their presence, just their presence alone, and the buzz that it created, kind of softened the territory in this community and the city for Islam. And the fact that Brother Kenneth became the chairman of the Method Civic League, I think that was a very significant and a strategic role that he was playing. Because, as I said in the video, he became a bridge between the Muslim community and the community. And I don't know, as I said, I don't know all the transactions that took place to purchase the property. I don't know all of the interactions that took place and the significant administrators here at the masjid that also played a significant role in making this a reality. But I think, you know, you can see Allah's hand working to create an environment that Islam would have a home, where Islam would have a home where it could flourish, particularly in this city. And it has happened. And I get warm fuzzies, I get chill bumps when I think about where Islam in this city has come from and where it is now, and particularly this masjid, because it's significant. Not just for those of you who frequent it now, but it's a pride, it's a sense, it has given all of the Muslims a sense of community pride. To say that I'm a Muslim, and I'm in the capital city of Raleigh, and I have a facility that reflects the dignity and the excellence, the itqan, if you will, the beauty of Islam and what this faith stands for. And I just say that in my piece is that Imam Kenneth, I know he was proud because I was with him that night. We were standing, he had just finished we actually bought a building in Durham on West Chapel Hill Street that used to be a nightclub. And it's now Masjid Al-Razak. And we stood across the street that evening, and he looked at that building, how we had changed it and reformed it. And he said, you know, brother, when I was in a meeting in Chicago, his teacher told him, he said, brother, one day you're going to be an instrumental part in building $1 million masjid a mosque in your community. He laughed. I said, really? So he said, yes, I was told that. And so to see that happen, it had great meaning for him. And so I know he died a happy man, knowing that he was instrumental, at least just his presence, even though he may not have nailed the nail, but he felt like he kind of was a bridge. He wasn't a river that divided the people, but he was that bridge that people could walk across and join hands. So that's all I would say on that. But if you have some questions, I'd be glad to answer. And this is my wife, Rhonda, his daughter.
Assalamu alaikum. I want to just insert a few little things during that time because Islam came to Raleigh actually in 1958. My father moved here from Baltimore, Maryland, and he was sent to North Carolina to bring the religion as we knew it at that time. And so I want to sort of give a backdrop because I think it's important for us to understand as African American Muslims or African Americans who were struggling in this country at that time, that was what we called Jim Crow. And Jim Crow was a time when black people or African Americans were subjugated to racism, prejudice, and treated as 3/5 of a person. And so when Islam came to us in America, it came to us as a remedy for the oppression that we were suffering. And so it was brought to us as a solution for freedom, justice, and equality. And so in 1958, my family moved here. My father came in 1958, and we moved here, my mother and his 3 children. We moved here in 1960. And it was a time that Islam was very strange in this city. This is considered the Bible Belt. North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham, all of this is considered the Bible Belt. And so when you think about a religion like Islam coming to an area that's steeped in Christianity, it was seen as a very strange phenomenon. But during that time, before it moved to the colleges and the college and the universities, it appealed to lay people who were just people out here trying to make a living, particularly those of us who were of African or African American descent. And so that I just want to establish that and help you to understand, because most of you come from Muslim countries where Islam is established. But it was not established here in this state and in this city until the late 1950s. And so what happened during the 1950s and 60s was that Islam took hold, the teaching as we were given it at that time, it took hold to people who were subjugated to prejudice. And it was seen as a means and a relief for the subjugation that we were under. And it was not until 1975 when Imam W.D. Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad's son, came in and established Islam proper with prayer, with our reverence to the Quran, that the shift happened in this country, and it happened very much so here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I just want to give you some backdrop, because I think it's important to understand how this deen was established here in this state, but also here in this city.
I just want to add another thing, too. The process of Islamization, when you look at it globally, it went to different regions of the world. It went to the different regions of the world and addressed those particular issues that were existing in those societies. And oftentimes the approach wasn't always the same. You know, you had to address the issues. The initial permit, when the Prophet ﷺ comes to Saudi Arabia, he addressed those issues that were plaguing the people in that society during that time. But the Quran came in that way. It addressed the issues as they arose. But here in America, it was, as my wife said, that was a special set of circumstances that existed in America. America was the hub of white supremacy. It was a hub of racism and slavery. And so a whole people, 20 million or more, had lost their dignity. And so that was an issue that had to be addressed. And it was addressed in the way it was addressed. But another point I want to make, I'm just making some points, that we cannot, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that, yes, the Nation of Islam at that time was a very prominent organization that attracted millions of people. But there were also African-American Muslims who didn't come that route. Many African Americans didn't come that route. That was the blessing of Allah, that they didn't have to go through that process to come. Allah blessed them to be able to see the path clearly without even having to come that route. But, so I'm saying there were, a lot of communities, there were some communities right here in Raleigh. They were small, but they were effective. They did what they did, and many communities across the country. And when you look around the country, as time moved forward, there were many immigrants, brothers from Africa and Egypt and different places. They were holding classes in different places, in some people's homes. So there was a lot of movement. There was an Islamic movement. There was a process of Islamizing America, and it was a diverse process. It just didn't come through one route. I wanted to make that point clear because oftentimes there is this super narrative that's given that they don't include these finer points that people have to consider, that Allah's wisdom is profound in the way he turns hearts of people toward his way and his pathways. So I wanted to make that point clear.
Thank you so much, Shukran. I mean, this was a treatise here today. So we're just touching on a few points, and I'm glad you brought out the point that people came into Islam in different ways. And like you said, not everybody came through this Nation of Islam. I did not. And so we have like Orthodox Islam, Sunni Islam, and people like Sister Nafia, I think would be under that category. We have people like sitting in the back, Sister Rakaya, Sister Khadija back there. I tried to get some other people who were part of that, like Brother Nuruddin, Sister Tahira. These were names that were given to me, but we couldn't get them to come and do it. So we just want to, it's not about getting glory, but it's about getting the truth out there and getting the truth of this deen. And one thing I can say, when you mentioned going through slavery, you've been through slavery or you felt a part of that. My parents and great-grandparents were a part of that. They dealt with racism. I grew up in the South. So we're not going to take that kind of thing when you go through that. You're not going to take that thing when you come into Islam, because Islam is not about hatred and division. And so when you see it rear its ugly head in Islam, we will not go back, in other words, in dealing with that. And so with that, I'm going to segue. And let me say that Brother Oliver, I didn't give his bio, he is Imam at Al Salam Islamic Center here in Raleigh. Sister Rhonda is a longtime teacher, professor as well, and her parents, Sister Margaret Rosemary and Brother Kenneth, many of these homes you see around here, they bought those homes. They still own some of those homes. I think her mother was one of the first to have a school for all children, and it still exists. I think it's still called the Vital Link. I'm just getting a plug in here. Okay, so they've been out there a long, long time. So I'm going to go with Sister Nafia, and she's going to share some things going back to the 1970s.
I'm Sister Nafia. Assalamu alaikum. As they were saying, I'm one of those that I didn't come through the nation. Actually, I took my shahada. I became a revert at Shaw University in 1973. My husband, Abdul Khalid, he was from New York, and he came down in 1968 to Shaw University as a student. And so he would come over to the campus, he and other brothers, to give dawah. So I took my shahada under him, and actually I married him, and we were married for 50 years before he passed. And during that time, when we were at Shaw University, I actually came to school there in 1970, and I became a revert in 1973. I reverted to Islam then. And during the time that we were existing at Shaw University, I was one of the students that prayed at NC State. We prayed in the green room before we could go to the ballroom, and we prayed in the blue room. So we prayed in several rooms. And also during that time, we didn't have a building. So we would go from home to home to home, or we would pray outside, or we could pray wherever we could find a location. and that was in 1973. As I was saying, the brothers would come on Shaw University campus and go around to other campuses giving dawah. It was actually my husband and two other brothers that actually moved overseas and actually lived there and didn't come back. And during that time, it was also Hassan Bailey, Tahir Abdallah, during that time. So they were more like the people that were introducing us to Islam and giving us, telling us about the faith. And then one of our biggest challenges was to have a building. So we also would come over to communicate with the Muslims here because we didn't have a building. So during that time, they also were doing the same things. They would go from building to building. We would rent buildings. We would pray at homes. We would pray outside. We would have our Eid prayers outside many times. And then we, after that, we started, we formed, that was one way that we had gotten the mosque to Shaw University. Dr. Mustafa, he asked Saudi Arabia to donate that mosque to us during that time. It was, and so that was how we started out at the mosque, got the mosque there at Shaw University. And then we would go on and we would start schools. We started a school. It was called Tarbiya Islamiyya. Tarbiya Islamiyya started in my home. And we had pre-K to elementary, and we were approved by the Department of Public Instruction to run that school. And after that, with that school, and during that time, we, once we had that school, then we grew out of that school. So in Northeast Raleigh, they had, all of them had a building, so we were allowed to use their building for the school. And then once we moved from the school, we moved over on Borland Avenue. And on Borland Avenue, we had ages pre-K to middle school. And this was, like I said, it was in 1973 when I took my Shahada, there. That was when the community started building over in the Shaw University area. Then, of course, my husband actually worked with Dr. Wahid on that, and brother Hassan Bailey on getting this masjid together. They would come to some of the meetings and they were involved, and they would go to Fayetteville and they would talk and meet also. And during that, then after that, we actually, we had after that we had the school, and then we joined the community here, and then we got the masjid. But then also, we had another school that moved over to the Borland Avenue area. We had, like the brother was saying, we had families here from Kuwait, Pakistan, Egypt, African Americans, and we would meet over there. And sometimes we were able to have Talim classes. The adults, they would actually come in. They could have classes in there. And we would have, also the students were there. And then after that, we actually moved over to O'Kelly Street. We were over at O'Kelly Street. We were able to have school and classes, and we began camps for the students around here. And our main focus, a lot of our focus was focusing on the building, having a place to pray, and the students at that time. Okay, and then, I remember when, like you said, when we had the building, we had gotten that building right behind there, and that was in the 80s. And so then, of course, we opened Al Iman School, but that was in the 90s. So we had our own place to pray and our places to congregate. Oh, yeah, and also during that time, when we were here, when we came, it was the Muhammad Baloch, Kamar Baloch, Nuruddin, but that was in the 80s, actually. They came around 80, 81. And the students that we taught was actually their children. So we taught the Baloches, we taught a lot of the students at that school. So we had them at the school and also. And then over Rakaya Gray, we had Abdul Kareem. He was part of that community at the early 80s. Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
So you see, we have to write things down as we age because we forget, you know, and we are all getting older. And that's another reason we want to do this program because many, for example, my husband, when I came here 15 plus years ago, he was very active in the community and security, telling me how he used to go to meet some of the immigrant brothers and sit in their apartments, and they were teaching him. And now he has passed. Now, Sister Nafia's husband, he has passed. So, you know, time is not promised. So we have to preserve this history, and we have to let people, especially young people, know. You have to know your history in order to move forward, because you might repeat the same mistakes again. So you learn from the challenges of the past, and you build on that. This does not just happen in a vacuum. It took a lot of hard work and challenges, you know, because you could imagine here you are with this strange religion in this Bible Belt, you know, trying to teach this. And we went through this with our families. Many of us, especially African American, come from Christian backgrounds. And so some of us are still dealing with that kind of misunderstanding. We love our families, but, you know, trying to get them to accept this religion is a challenge. Alhamdulillah, so we're grateful and thankful. So I would love to bring up Imam Oliver. There's a lot of history. Like I said, we kind of stopped around the 70s, early 80s, and this masjid, I believe, the beginning for that, it came around in the early 80s. But we wanted you to be aware that this masjid stands on the foundation of many sisters and brothers who you might pass every day and don't know that they played a very pivotal role in establishing this masala and in having Islam accepted in this area. And now you see so many other masjids around this area. You know, people are not afraid anymore to build a masjid in the Bible Belt. People, they can't say they don't know Islam because it's out there now. And so Imam Oliver, he's going to come up and share a few words. And as you know, Imam Bayononi played a very important role. He wasn't able to be here, but I think he's going to share some of the history of the early 80s. And if you like, we would like to continue this, maybe getting to the 80s and the 90s, and bring some people who we're not here from today. Okay, so Imam Oliver, are you around? Yes. Sure. And I know Brother Colin wanted to say if he has a few words. I know he was there.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallahu khair. Just following up on what you said, is there any current initiative or in the past to capture the history of the area and the Muslim, or better yet, if there are any books that, you know, tackle this topic that you could recommend?
Sorry. Yeah, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair for asking that question. So last year, we did a podcast, actually, a recording. It was called Backpacking Method. And it was talking to different community members and how, for example, Al-Iman School was founded, who the early people were who were involved in that. It was very basic, and so that's a great question that you're asking, like how do we get for our own community in deep detail about, you know, these oral histories, which are so important. But right now what exists is a podcast on Spotify about IR, Al-Iman School, Al-Nur School, you know, and then other communities within Method. So yes, to answer your question, this initiative does need to happen.
Yeah, and I see Sister Tanzil back there who's quiet. She's a wealth of knowledge, so we have to pull people out. Brother Colin, who's sitting there, so many others. I see your faces. I don't know how, Brother Fiaz, so we have a...
Apologize for being so forward, but I think this is a beautiful opportunity. It is said that if you do not learn from your history, you are doomed to repeat the mistakes of your history. And this is a vital moment in our, we stand today at a crossroads given the political situation of this country, the political situation in the world. And we as Muslims have a beautiful opportunity in front of us. And I would beg all of you actually to let's start local. We all want to help our brothers and sisters overseas, but we have to start local. And right here in this community, there are people that are suffering in this neighborhood, people that are suffering from alcoholism, drug problems, extreme poverty. And we have to start right here and help our neighbors. We can't just drive by their houses and, turn a blind eye towards them. We have to bring the beauty of Islam that these elders have spoken about and how Islam came here and changed people's lives. We have the opportunity right here to build those bridges that Imam Oliver was talking about. So anything that you can do to help continue this, and I would wholeheartedly support at least a part 2, if not more, of how we can build those bridges, how we can utilize the talents of the students that are here, the entrepreneurs that are here, the diversity that is here, to build those bridges starting in this very community and then inshallah spreading it out. And thank you so much for...
Nobody's there. That's reading. The sister raised her hand. She had a...
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Ruqayya Ali, and I'm one of the pioneers of Islam in other parts of the country, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Atlanta, overseas too as well. But my question was, when you use the word method community, and all we know is that method, I live in Durham, so I don't know so much about the city, the streets, but when you use the word method, all we know is there's this method street. So what do you exactly mean when you say the method community? I don't know exactly.
IAR is located in a very historical black community. This area where Meredith College was a plantation. And this was one of the first areas that black people were able to get shanty homes and to build shanty homes. And I say that because they were what we used to call, you're from here, so you shotgun, shotgun homes. You could look straight through them, okay? And so this is a very historical community of black people right up from slavery. And so when we use the word method, it's one of the few communities in the whole city of Raleigh that still is intact. Cameron Village was also, it used to be called Oberlin, but Cameron Village was also a black community. And so there's a lot of history in the city of Raleigh that goes unnoticed or unrecognized. But yes, I think, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think people are saying method and IAR, and what is all this about? But method is a historically black community right up from slavery. And we have been trying through the Method Civic League, thank you, Nafia. We have been trying through the Method Civic League to get it declared as a historical site in the city of Raleigh. And it's been an arduous task. It really has. for a number of reasons. But yes, so Method is a historical black community that has just came up from slavery.
Thank you. Yes, please, if you can look at the barcode, use your phone, go to that. You can answer the questions. You have the hard copy we gave you. We want your feedback, please. We said interesting topics you might be interested in, but also activities for seniors. You know, a lot of seniors are at home. Their children are working or their grandkids, and nobody is there with them. We have seniors in nursing homes that need to be visited. So, you know, please share your ideas, and we need your help with that. And we need your feedback before you leave. So we're going to ask Brother Sharab, can you close us out? I think we're close to the end. I don't know whether Ma'am Morma came in or not. Did he come in? Jazakallah khair to everybody. We hope to do a part 2.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan. This is coming and entering into the senior fold. This is one of the most active committees that I've seen. Surprisingly, even though it should be the youth, but alhamdulillah, the youth are doing their own. But I find that this is a very active community. The more you participate, the more you get the word out, and the more, inshallah, we'll try to do more things and more activities where the community can feel that, yes, they are part of this, even at the end of the journey, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan wa assalamu alaikum.